Hi, I'm Amy Howard, and I've had the privilege of designing and manufacturing a line of furniture for 23 years for presidents and rock stars alike. But I'm more excited now to be able to show you how to rescue, restore, and redecorate the more than 8.5 million tons of furniture that we throw away in this country every year. One of the greatest and easiest ways to be able to do it is with our one-step paint. It allows you to be able to rescue those pieces in one easy step. So, here, let's go. All right, so today we're actually going to be rescuing and restoring a kitchen cabinet that we have. As you can see, this is probably from the 70s, and a lot like the pieces of furniture that you're going to be finding, they're going to be really dirty. There's going to be a little grime on them, and also there's probably going to be several applications of lacquer, waxes, shellacs, things that would have naturally happened over the life course of the piece that you're actually going to be rescuing. So one of the first things we need to do, it's going to be really important to clean it. We want to make sure that we use a degreaser. That's going to get the grime and everything off. So using a lint-free rag, I'm going to just be cleaning this piece. I want to make sure that I don't use a terry cloth because then it's going to be leaving little particles of fabric around. So it's really important to use a lint-free rag. A lot of people will ask me, what makes your paint different? I love it because one, it's made in the US. Two, it does not contain methanol. Methanol is a toxic ingredient that for people that are asthmatic like myself, that it can affect them. Also, it does not have to be sealed. So part of the beauty of our one-step paint, it has that beautiful matte chalky finish like you would find on an old antique, but you don't have to seal it with wax if you want it to have that beautiful finish and not look antiqued. Another thing that you can do is you can add our Bright Idea lacquer to it so it can be a great looking shiny glossy lacquered piece. Also, you can add the waxes, which I'm going to show you in this video if you want it to look aged. So the first thing you need to do is when you buy your one-step paint, turn it upside down. And the reason for that is because this is all natural, it's green, and it doesn't have the chemicals and the ingredients in it that a normal acrylic or latex paint will. That allows the yummy ingredients that may have settled at the bottom to come to the top of the can. So while you're doing that, you're basically getting all of your materials together. Then after it's sat there for about 30 or 45 minutes, you want to be able to shake your can very well, making sure all the ingredients are equally distributed in the can. Then I'm actually going to take a stir stick, and I want to make sure that I'm getting down into the bottom and that it's stirred up very, very well. Now, I've made sure that my cabinet door that I'm working on has completely dried, and I'm going to start painting. So in this video, I'm using one of our hog hair brushes. You can use a china bristle, you can use a synthetic brush, you can also spray this on. So you want to make sure that you cut it about 20% with water, throw it in your airless sprayer and spray it. So you'll notice as I'm applying this, I'm kind of doing it in some cross-hatching. I don't really want to be showing the size of the tool that I'm using, so I'm actually going in different directions. Now you can also paint with the grain. And I love the fact too that especially with our black one-step paint, it's a true black, it's really beautiful, it's gonna look great on these kitchen cabinets, but I also love the fact that it's gonna dry in about 20 to 30 minutes. So as I'm working on my kitchen, I can literally finish today. The other thing I love about the one-step paint is it allows me to be able to start my piece. You'll notice I didn't sand it, I didn't strip it, and I didn't have to prime it with anything. I love the fact that I can also use it on a brick fireplace. I can use it on tile. Maybe there's an old chair that I find and I don't want to have to go to the expense of reupholstering it. I can thin the one-step paint down with half water and half one-step paint, and I can paint my fabric. I don't have to reupholster my piece. So there's so many ways to be able to use this to rescue your pieces, literally in moments. One thing to remember, it's one step, not one coat. So on this particular piece, I am actually going to come back and just kind of here and there add a little bit more black paint. then as it started to tack up a little bit, I'm just going to finesse my brush strokes that I originally did in my application to make the piece where it's just a little bit more refined. Now, so my piece is dried, and when I noticed the detailing on the cabinet door, I thought, you know what, that would look really nice if I added some gilding to it. So what I did is I taped it off just to be able to expose only this area so I'd be able to work on it. And I laid down some Buhl, which is a red color that you'll see show up a lot of times underneath gold leaf. And then I laid my leaf on top of it, and I'm just starting to kind of burnish it off. I do have another video that is strictly on gilding, so if you want to watch that, that'll be able to show you how to actually do this process. And I want to get some of the residue off. Then I'm going to be really careful to remove my tape. So I'm going to come back with a little bit of steel wool. I like 4/0 because it's really, really fine. I don't use sandpaper ever when I add gold leaf to my pieces of furniture or cabinetry or whatever. So the reason I'm using the steel wool is just to be able to get a little bit of wear through. So one, I might see the first coat of the black one step that I applied. I may see some of the red that I added, but it just makes it look a little aged because I've decided that I'm going to go on and wax them to make them look like they might have just a little bit of age to them. Now remember, if I don't want to wax them, I don't have to. I had a friend of mine that was asking me, he was going to be painting his concrete fireplace, and he said, could we paint our concrete fireplace or our brick fireplace with a one-step? And I said, absolutely. You do want to thin it down a little bit because it's really, really thick. And let's say we add 20 to 30% water to it. Stir it up well, and then paint it on your brick. I do want to make sure that we get the soot off. We want to use a degreaser, clean it off very well, and then apply the one-step paint. If you do want to get to this point and you do want it to be aged, we need to add the wax. So a lot of people will say, do I have to use the light wax? Is it a two-step process? Absolutely. So the first thing we want to do is take our light antique wax, and the reason it's called light antique is because it's a combination of carnauba and beeswax, so it has a beautiful color. So I'm going to take my China Bristle Amy Howard at Home brush. I'm going to offload it onto a piece of cardboard. The reason I do this is I never want to go directly from my container of wax onto my piece. It could be too much, and then it's actually going to take longer to dry, and I've wasted more wax. So I'm offloading. You'll notice my wrist, how it's constantly turning. And then I'm going to come back all over. I'm coming over my gold leaf as well as the piece itself. Notice again how my wrist is turning. You see, if I painted it this direction, I would have a tendency to overlap and then I would have lines. When I'm working vigorously like this and moving my wrist, I don't get that. The wax smells wonderful. It has a very clean, natural smell because it's beeswax and carnauba. I'm going to let my wax dry for about 15 or 20 minutes. So I'm going to go on and work on another one of my cabinet doors because I do want it to reach what we call is a tack. It's a tack that it's not greasy, it's not moving around, but it's dry enough that I can come back and add my dark antique wax without it creating a third wax. If I put the dark wax on now, it would literally mix in with the first application of light antique wax and make a third color. I don't want that. So I'm going to allow this to completely dry for about 15 or 20 minutes, and then I'm going to come back with the dark antique wax just where the piece would normally get dirty. So I'm going to come back here, same process again of getting the wax on my brush, offloading it. It's really important to make sure that you offload it so there's very little showing. That's going to allow me more control when I'm actually antiquing it. So I'm going to come and pounce on my gold leaf first, just to kind of set it back. It's really kind of shiny right now and I don't want it to be. Since I'm trying to make it look old, I want to set this gold back. And you see how very carefully I am pouncing it. I don't want to overdo it. Then I'm going to come back onto the actual surface of the flat part of the cabinet. And there again, do you see how my wrist is moving? Dry brushing my dark wax here and there. You're not going to see it as much on the black, but let's say for instance my piece was Bauhaus buff, or if it was a pale blue, it would be showing up. So I want to be very, very careful as how much I'm applying. I'm going to focus on the outer edges on a lighter color, and I'm just going to kind of fan it here and there because I don't want it to be overdone at all. I do want this to set and dry there again to that beautiful tack point for about 15-20 minutes. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to apply the Dust of Ages. And I always give the analogy to my students in class. When you go into a museum and you see those incredible frames hanging on the wall and they're beautifully carved, when you look down in the crevices, you'll see dust of the ages. Now taking a nice, clean, dry brush, I'm going to dip it into my Dust of Ages. And I'm going to make sure I'm focused on getting it into the crevices of where this trim is. Now you'll notice there is some residue of dust coming up, so if you're not in a ventilated area, you need to be sure and wear a dust mask, just for safety. I'm going to distribute it just a little bit because it actually will help with part of the finish and the color and making it look old into the black, and I love how that does in my finish. A lot of people are really surprised how generous I am with it, especially when I'm working on a carved surface. I use a lot. Now, a lot of people will say, can I reuse this? If you want to dust it off to be able to put it in a little container or put it back in the jar, absolutely. So again, I'm using a lint-free rag. You'll see how I've got a large rag. It's not a small piece because as I'm buffing it, I want to make sure that my fingers don't show through. So buffing like you would a shoe, think about that motion of a hit drag buffing. That's how I'm going to buff my cabinet. The thing that I love about this most is you think about those cabinets when you go into a kitchen, which if you're not aware, that's one of the most expensive areas to actually restore and redecorate. So here within a few hours, and a couple of quarts of my black one-step, I will have transformed my entire kitchen. So as I'm doing this, I'm thinking about how amazing it would be to be able to have a zinc top as my counter. Maybe this was a piece of furniture that I rescued. You can use the same process of the one-step paint, your light wax, your dark wax, and your Dust of Ages on rescuing and restoring just about anything. I want to make sure that I've evenly buffed it. I'm going to leave some of this Dust of Ages in the crevices because I like what that does with my age. I like the detail that it gives me too. And I'll notice some of the cross-hatching that I've got from my application of going back and forth in the beginning. That's all very desirable. So now, go enjoy the bracken knives. Hi, my name is Amy Howard. Today I'm going to show you how to be able to create one of the fastest growing trends that you're going to notice in the interior design industry right now, and that's lacquer. Years ago, designers would have to take furniture to their local automobile shop and have it lacquered. But unfortunately, that could cost upwards of $300 to $600 for a piece of furniture. Now we've made it easy with the Amy Howard at Home Lacquers to be able to do it yourself in your own home. There are a couple of things that you can remember when you're getting ready to do your lacquer project. One, you can have a lot of fun to be able to pick your colors. We have 21 colors available, 4 of those being metallic. So when you're choosing that piece, you do want to be able to make a decision where you're going to be working on your project. One of the little tricks that I have is for you to be able to use a clothing bag. Just unzip it. You want to get the extra wide ones. That way you can place your piece inside it and it acts as a mini spray booth. So on this little piece, these were actually some chairs that we got at a thrift store for $15. And they already have a great sheen to them. They've been shellacked. So there's no need for me to use my primer. Primers are really important if you're going to be working on a piece that has a grain to it. The primer has a sanding sealer and a leveling agent in it with white paint. So that sets it up. It allows you to be able to lightly sand it with 400 sandpaper in between coats to get it ready for your lacquer. So on this particular project, I don't have to use my primer, but I do suggest it on other pieces that you might be lacquering. But I do need to clean this piece first. So I'm going to take the seat off that I've already unscrewed, and you're going to have grime, dirt, grease that's going to be on a piece over a period of time. What I recommend using is a degreaser. Now you'll need to be sure and notice on a lot of the containers that you'll see at your local hardware stores that'll say concentrate. We need to make sure that we cut it with water if it says concentrate on it. You don't want to use the solid degreaser if it needs to be cut with water. So I've cut this with 50% water, and I'm going to use a lint-free rag and come back and clean my piece really, really well. It's also really important when you're going to be cleaning it and using a degreaser to allow it to dry. A lot of people think, well, I've just cleaned it, but it's still kind of wet. So I want to make sure and come back and make sure that I've dried it really well with another rag. The most fun part of this is picking the color that you want your piece to come in. Because the lacquers are so easy to use, the hardest decision is going to probably be what color am I going to be able to do the lacquer in. So once you've done that, you want to make sure that you shake it vigorously, at least for 2 or 3 minutes. Each can of lacquer is going to cover about 18 square feet of surface area. So on this particular chair, I'm really only going to need 1 can of lacquer. It's easily going to take care of it. So after I've shaken it very well, you'll notice that the nozzle, it's a patented nozzle that sprays in a fan direction. Most paint spray cans are going to have a circle, and that's not going to give you as pretty a finish. The other thing that you need to remember, this is your paintbrush. This can is going to give you the ability to be able to have a 100% coverage on this piece, but it's not like putting on hairspray. And I use that analogy, and my husband thinks it's so funny. But you think about when women spray their hair, it's this action, it's all over the place. That's not how we're going to lacquer a piece of furniture. It's very methodical. We make sure that it's nice and tight. We want to stay around 5 to 6 inches from our piece, but it's not everywhere, because what's going to happen, that's going to be overspray that's going to make your piece go completely dead flat, and it's going to be bumpy. If you have problems on your piece and you're like, it's not as shiny as I would want it to be, that's probably because you've got an overspray on it. So it's really important to start at the top of the piece and work your way down. So I'm going to turn my chair around. And starting off, you see, I let off on the cap. That way I am being very methodical. I'm going to come back and overlay on top of what I've already sprayed. Along the way as I'm working on it, I'm going to give them a nice shake. You see already, I see a couple of areas I want to be able to just kind of come back on. And I'm going to work my way down. Now you can turn the nozzle up or down depending on in which area that you're working on. But you see that I want to make sure that I'm covering it as I'm working my way down. Because if I started to just move around the chair, I would get overspray from a particular area. So I'm going to continue on with my legs like this. I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna put an entire first coat on my piece. I'm gonna allow it to dry about 45 minutes to an hour. I'm gonna come back with 400 grit sandpaper and lightly come over it all over my finish. And then I'm gonna put a second coat of my orchid lacquer on top of it. Now I've come back on my little chair. I have 2 coats of lacquer on it. I sanded in between with my 400 grit. Now as a final application, I'm gonna come back with what we call our Bright Idea. I love this product because it's great for 2 things. It gives me an added protection for my finish because lacquer is a nitrocellulose lacquer and it will have a tendency to chip with a lot of heavy use, or if you have puppies or you have children in your home, and as we all do with our family, so we want to just protect it. And I use the analogy of with your nails. When you have your nails done and you get that top coat on top of it, it's extra protection and it's extra gloss. So I'm going to shake it vigorously just like I did with my lacquer. This is completely dried, and I'm going to come back the same way again. I'm going to start at the very top because I don't want overspray to come down on it and make it go flat. So I'm using my can just like I would a paintbrush. I'm going to come back, I'm overlapping, and you'll notice again it's really important, don't get too far away, but yet you don't want puddling. If you get puddling, don't freak out. I just want you to be able to come back with some 400 grit sandpaper. After it's dried, lightly sand it out, put a nice clean pass over it again, and then you're going to go to the next step. The cool thing about the lacquer is that I can use it on top of resin, I can use it on glass, ceramic tile, wood, things that are already lacquered. I also love being able to incorporate it with the one-step paint. When I'll come in and I'll use it on fabric, I'll lay a stencil on top of it, and then I'll spray my lacquer to be able to give details on it. So after I've applied my Bright Idea, there's no need to sand afterwards. I'm going to be happy with the fact that it's nice and glossy and it's protected. I'm just going to allow it to be able to dry for a couple of hours. This sweet little rescue chair is going to make some preteen young girl really, really happy. I'm going to put some faux sheep fur on here. That way we'll have a pair of them in our room. It'll make a great desk chair. So you can take rescued furniture. How many of us haven't seen pieces of furniture laying on the side of the road? Next time you see it, just remember how awesome it was that we did the finish with this lacquer and how easy it was just in an afternoon. Hi, my name is Amy Howard. Antique zinc is all over Pinterest and magazines. You'll see it used in so many ways on kitchen countertops, backsplashes, on top of your furniture. Today I'm going to show you how easy it is to be able to recreate that same finish on simple sheet metal. I'll never forget the first time I saw real antique zinc was when I went to the Paris flea market. First thing I wanted to do was to be able to go home and recreate it myself. Antique Parisian zinc has so many great applications. It's great for kitchen countertops. It's great to be able to use on an existing piece that you want to make a tabletop, maybe for a family harvest table in your kitchen room. What you need to start with first is 22 gauge sheet metal. And you're thinking, where am I going to go get sheet metal? My suggestion would be to go to your local sheet metal shop and tell him what it is that you're wanting to be able to use it for. Let's say, for instance, we're rescuing a 42-inch square cocktail table. We're going to paint the base of it with our one-step, and on the top, it's going to be about 1.5 inches thick. So I'm going to tell him I want a 22 gauge sheet metal, and I want a rolled edge on it because I'm going to use it as a cap. Much like you would your tooth, a cap goes over it and protects it. So I'm going to test it out. Here's a piece of 22 gauge sheet metal. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean it. You're going to notice that there's kind of a greasy residue to it. So I'm going to take my degreaser and I'm going to spray it on. And I'm going to take a lint-free rag. This is very important. And I'm just going with a little elbow grease. I'm going to make sure that I'm getting all of the grease off of it. Now I'm going to come back with just a little bit of tap water. I'm going to put it on top of it because I want to make sure that there's no surfactants or anything left over from my degreaser. So I'm going to take my lint-free rag again and I'm just going to dry it off. Now I'm actually ready to put the zinc product on. I want to shake it up very well. I'm going to pour it into a styrofoam bowl, a Tupperware container, or even a glass bowl. So it's nice to be able to designate certain Tupperware containers, styrofoam bowls to be able to use for your different craft projects. So I'm going to take some surgical gloves just to be able to protect my hands. All right, then I'm going to dip my rag down into it and let it saturate it. Now I'm going to come back and I'm modeling it. It's very important. You'll already see the oxidation process to start. You do want to go off of it because I don't want to create a band around it, so I want to act like my surface area is just a little larger than it actually is. So I'm constantly moving around. I don't want to go in lines. I don't want to come around the edges and create a pattern. Consequently, that's why I'm moving. So my first pass with this, I'm going over the entire piece. Once I've got the entire surface covered, I'm going to come back and I'm going to use a little bit of pressure and I'm going to start going in circles, because see how it started to reticulate? It's kind of like oil and water and it's fighting. So we want to make sure that it all starts to go evenly. So see here how it's starting to say, okay. And I'm going to continue this process basically for 10 or 15 minutes, however long it's going to take this to actually all turn this dark color. You'll notice I am using a little bit of pressure because I want to make sure that all of that is going to be accepted. I don't want those little bright holidays of sheet metal showing through. I want it to look nice and old, like it's got a couple of hundred years of age on it. So now once I see that it's all been accepted and the surface area, I don't have bright areas, I'm gonna come back with a rag and I'm gonna just kind of blot it. Now I am noticing just a little areas here. See where this is quite a bit darker? I am gonna come back with just a little bit additional application because I want those brighter areas to go a little darker. I don't have to come back over the areas that are already dark. I'm just gonna add it. And you see how I'm still working in a modeling hit drag motion. Nice, now I'm starting to see it turn a little darker. That's perfect, that's what I was looking for. All right. Now I'm going to come back and I'm going to blot it again, and I'm going to wait for about 20 or 30 minutes to allow it to be able to air dry. All right, so you'll notice I've just taken a little bit of piece of cardboard. I could have a fan, but as it starts to dry, see how it's going to that beautiful dead chalky finish. I just love it. I love being able to use the zinc in combination with pieces that I do the one-step paint on because it looks so incredibly authentic. Because it's an oxidation process, it's amazing. After it's dried about 30 minutes to an hour, it's ready for me to apply my wax. Now the great thing about it is I can put the clear wax on top of my Antique Parisian zinc finish, and as it dries, it's going to go back to this beautiful dead chalky finish. I love that about it. But the longer you give it to dry, the better it's going to look after you've waxed it. I prefer having it to where it can dry at least an hour. If you need to be able to leave the project and come back to it tomorrow, that is absolutely all right. So I'm going to take my clear wax, make sure it's a generous amount, and I can put it on in this direction or my hog hair brush. It needs to be clear wax because it allows the depth of the color to be able to show. Our beauty and our texture is already here in this zinc, so we're just wanting to protect it if we're going to be using it on a countertop. And a lot of people will say, well, can I put food directly on top of it? You want to use a cutting board. You want to be able to use some type of protection. Zinc will scratch, but to me that just adds to the patina because they're so utilitarian, they just look better and better with age. So after I've allowed my wax to dry for about an hour, I've buffed it with my lint rag, and I see the beautiful patina to it. I love the depth of just kind of that beautiful chalky dead finish with just a little bit of greening. Remember, no two of these will be alike. This is a process that's taking place as you're doing it. So enjoy the fact that it's a one of a kind. It's something that you've done, and you can enjoy the bragging rights. Hi, I'm Amy Howard. How many times have you gone antiquing and you found a great chair or an upholstered piece and you wanted to buy it, but you knew it was going to cost several $100s to actually have it reupholstered? Today, in this video, I'm going to show you how just within moments you can transform an upholstered piece with a one-step paint. So I'm going to be testing a different color combination that I want to be able to use on this amazing dining chair that I'm rescuing. The chair that I'm going to be working on is an old ball and claw chair. It's kind of a cherry finish. It's probably from the 1970s, and I'm going to lacquer it in White Perfection lacquer. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm taking my round hog hair brush. I'm going to dip it into my Massey Hill, and I'm just going to stipple it on. It's going to probably take 2 applications, but this first one I'm going to let it dry for about 30 minutes. And I can use fabric that actually has a design on it. I do want to stay with a low nap. Things like linens, chintz, cottons are great. Now, on the other hand, sometimes I do cheat just a little bit, and I will take velvet with a low nap and I'll lay a stencil on it. So as I'm applying this, I'm looking to see if one coat is going to be enough. Now remember, it's one-step paint, not one coat. So sometimes it may take 2 coats, depending on if the fabric color bleeds through. So even if I was working on a piece of furniture, I'll just be doing this while the piece is upholstered. I don't have to take the fabric off of it. That's really important. Now my testing fabric has dried. It's been about 30 minutes. So you'll notice the nice thing about it is, because I did thin my one-step paint just a little bit with water, it's still very supple. A lot of people think, if I'm going to paint fabric, what is it going to feel like? It feels amazing. And it doesn't come off on your clothes, so you don't have to worry about that. I'm going to apply a stencil, which this particular piece, it's already been done. This is an adhesive stencil, so it allows me to be able to just stick it on there. A lot of people call these kiss cut stencils. You can use different little machines that you have to be able to make any design you want. Today I'm working with a damask design that we've put on top of my sample fabric. All right, so I've laid down my damask stencil on top of my one-step Massey Hill paint that has had about 30 minutes to dry. And I love the new orchid color. So I love the combination of the orange and the purple. So I'm going to dip my brush, a new clean brush that's dry, into my paint, and I'm going to do a stippling effect. That way, the reason I don't want to be brushing it on is because it will allow it to be able to seep down in behind my stencil. So it's really important that I'm stippling it. I love the fact that the easeability of being able to use the one-step on fabric. Let's say you want to be able to change the color of the drapes in your family room. All you have to do, take them off the rings, paint them. You can come back and do a design like this on top of them, and they're totally new. All right, so after this has a chance to dry, I'm going to cheat just a little bit because I want to be able to show you. I'm going to go in and I'm going to pull away my stencil. Because it was adhesive, I'm going to have to pull it off in sections. So that way, when I'm finished, this is my design. So again, all I did, I cut my one step with just about 20% water to be able to thin it down. I use my round hog hair brush. I stipple over it to make sure it's nice and covered. I don't want to have too many brush strokes. If you get one of the hog hair or China bristle brush hair in your paint, just take a loop of a little bit of tape, touch it, and it'll bring it up. Then I allowed it to dry 20 to 30 minutes. I came back, applied my stencil, and then took my beautiful orchid color, stippled it on top of it, and voila. I love the color combinations. They're really fun. It allows me to be able to see with the design how amazing it's going to look. So I'm going to go enjoy the bragging rights. Hi, my name is Amy Howard. It's absolutely impossible to open up Pinterest, a magazine, and not see incredible looking antique mirror. Today in this video, I'm going to show you how easy it is to just take regular mirror and make it look like it was 200 years old. Now it is really important to get real mirror. Some people will go to flea markets or a place and they're actually trying to strip the back off of a mirror and process it like I'm going to be showing you today, but it's not real mirror. So we want to make sure that we start with real mirror, and one way to be able to know that is on the back of the mirror that the reflective is going to be on the front, and on the back it's a baked on gray finish. This is really important that we've got to get this off to be able to control the surface that we're going to be working on. Years ago, when we started experimenting and we wanted to be able to recreate antique mirror, we would literally have to go in the parking lot behind our studio and we would try to take muriatic acid and we would try to go through it with some nails and try to recreate that. But unfortunately, it didn't give us the beautiful composition that I'm going to be able to show you how to do today. So one of the first things you need to do is we're going to take our antique mirror stripper. It's going to be really important that you protect your hands. Now for easeability today, I'm actually going to be using some surgical gloves, but I would prefer that you use stripping gloves. Those are going to go up a little bit further on your arm and they're going to give you a lot more protection. The other thing is, because we are working with a stripper, we want to make sure that we're in a very well ventilated area. So I'm going to take my antique mirror stripper and I'm going to shake it really well. And then I'm going to pour it directly on the back of my mirror. Also, I would suggest, I'm not doing it because of easeability today and teaching you, but it is good to wear eye protection. If you wear glasses, that's great. If not, it would be good to be able to put on some goggles. So I'm going to pour it directly on top of the back of my mirror. I'm going to put my cap back on. Using a foam brush or a foam roller. If you're working on large pieces, you can use a roller. And in production, when we're actually making antique mirror, that's what we do. So you notice I'm making sure that I get 100% coverage, and I'm also wanting to make sure that some areas are not thinner and some are really heavy. Unfortunately, just through experience, I've noticed that if I think that more will do it better than less, that is not the case. If I get it puddled up too heavy, it actually will not bubble up nicely, where if I get it all done the same. Now, can you see the process already starting to happen? So what happens is it's starting to lift this baked on back of enamel away from the mirror itself. So you see how quickly this is happening. Now I will tell you, in a warmer environment, it's going to happen faster than if it's colder. All right, so loving it, loving it. See how quickly that happens? So I'm going to take some craft paper and I'm going to place it after it's all started to release, and you'll see that it's crinkly looking. I'm going to lay my craft paper all at one time over it, and holding it in place, I'm going to burnish it to where the entire surface is going to lift with my paper. And you want to lift it away from yourself like this, so that way it lifts off in one complete piece and you're protected. So I'm going to roll this up very carefully because it does have the stripper on it. I don't want to get that on my arms or my wrist. Now, I'm going to do a second stripping of the mirror, because you'll notice in here there's a coppery color where it's almost a reddish color, and you'll also see the detailing where it looks crinkly to where the stripper actually was crinkled. So we want to get rid of that because that's not desirable in our final product of our antique mirror. So I'm going to take my sponge brush, and with just a little bit of pressure, I'm going to get any residue of leftover mirror. And now you'll start to see this beautiful clear color of my mirror because that copper is going away. See how I'm turning my sponge brush? I'm making sure that I'm getting the edges really well. When I'm coming back, I'm just wanting to make sure that this entire area is all nice and white, real clear. Now, I'm gonna come over to a water bath. You can use a water bath like we've done on smaller pieces. We'll use a Tupperware container. We'll just fill it up about a quarter of a way through, a quarter of a way up. Room temperature is fine. I'm gonna take my simple green that's been diluted, and I'm gonna spray it on top of my mirror. And I'm gonna bathe it. So you'll see a lot of those little particles that were sticking will start to come off. And in the studio, we'll literally set up 3 different little Tupperware baths like this, so that way you're rinsing it once, twice, and 3 times, and that way the baths will get a little cleaner at each step of the way. All right, I'm gonna turn this over because I wanna make sure that I have a nice clean surface area that I'm working on. So you'll notice my mirror here it's wet. And let's say, for instance, you're working on a large piece of mirror. It's perfectly all right. You can use a hose, you can use it, you can be outside and do this in order to be able to clean it. Don't forget to use the simple green though before you actually use the water from the hose. The other thing that you need to remember is now we've taken this back off, and it's very, very susceptible to scratching, any type of movement on the back of it. I want to keep my fingers away. I want to respect the fact that I'm getting ready to antique it and I don't want to scratch it. So I'm going to take my Antique Mirror solution, which is part 2 of this process. I'm going to shake it very well, put it in my plastic container. Then again, I'm taking my lint-free rag that I'm working with. These are great t-shirt materials that you can wash and reuse. And I'm gonna come back, and in a pattern, I'm moving around. I wanna make sure that I'm not gonna come in and go along the sides. I don't wanna create lines. I don't wanna create borders. I wanna move around to where it's very organic looking. And you'll start to see the oxidation process happen. See the colorization that's already starting to go darker? Hear that hit drag motion? Hit drag, hit drag, hit drag, hit drag, because I'm patting that around. Oh, I love it already. You will notice that there is an odor to the Antique Mirror solution. So you just want to make sure that you're working in an environment that it's, if there's a nice breeze, that's okay. You just want to make sure that it's not closed in. It's not offensive, but it smells kind of like eggs. So after I've come back and I've saturated the entire area, you're going to start to see it turn these beautiful blue colors, grays, reds. It's beautiful. So I'm going to come back in a circular motion. If I want, I can take a little bit more solution. And I'm going to go in circles, just again to make sure that I've gotten a nice, even finish on my mirror. Remember that we're working in reverse. So we're working on the back of the mirror. We've stripped the back off. We've actually antiqued it from the back, but you get to see all of your beauty from the front. That's what's going to create the antique mirror. So as it starts to pull through an antique, I know that those are going to be the areas when I put my paint on the back of it, it's going to look like dark, black antiqued mirror. So I'm starting to see this pull up. I'm gonna come back and add just a little bit more. Now, if I want to be able to keep it as antique mirror, I'm gonna stop at this point, but I want to be able to make it look a little older. I want to make it look like a mercury mirror. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to rinse it. Again, I'm being very, very careful because it's very susceptible to scratching. And I tell people when you're working on the back of this mirror, don't even use paper towels because paper towels can act like a fine sandpaper. Even more important, why we need to continue to work with lint-free t-shirts or rags. Then I want to come back and I'm going to just dab it very carefully, making sure that my jewelry or nothing is going to hit it or scratch it. And there again, see how I'm jumping around. It's always about being organic shapes. I don't want to be going in lines and creating patterns like this. So once it's completely dry, if you need to, you can hit it with a hair dryer. It's going to speed up the process a little bit, but remember, when you add the heat to it, it may make the mercury antiquing process happen even faster, so be careful about that. In this particular instance, I'm just going to use a rag. Looks like I'm about dry now. So all I've done is I've taken my antique mirror solution, which was our second process, I poured it into a little spray bottle, and it's like a mister. So I'm going to just spray it here and there, and what happens, there's a reticulation process that will start to take place to make it look aged. You want to make sure that you don't hold the bottle over it too much where it actually leaks on it and makes large circles. I'm just going to let this set, and it's going to start aging it, and it's going to have these beautiful little reticulated circles on the front of the mirror. So as it's starting to age, I'm going to be looking at it to see what it looks like. So see right here, see how it's starting to age? Ooh, I love this. All right, you know what? I'm going to mist it one more time, and then I'm going to rinse it. So you're going to mist, dry, until you get it to the point that you like it, and then you're going to clean it. Beautiful. All right, so I'm going to come back over here into my bath. Very carefully, I'm just going to clean the back of it. Again, there's no cleaning solutions or anything in this. This is just tap water. I'm going to pat it dry. A lot of people love how the back looks, but you can't leave it this way because it's not protected. Remember, it's going to scratch. But let's say, for instance, you did want to be able to keep it like this. You could seal it with a lacquer, and I would probably suggest putting a clear piece of glass on top of it just to protect it. So after the back of my mirror is completely dry, I'm going to take my one step. So remember to turn the can upside down for about 30-40 minutes. That allows all the yummy goodness inside the natural ingredients to come to the top. Then give it a nice shake. Then you want to make sure it's stirred up really, really good. All right, so after the back of my mirror is completely dry, I'm going to take my one step and I'm going to paint it on with a sponge brush or a foam roller. And what this is doing, it's sealing it again. Remember when I took the back off? This is going to give it its protection, and it's also going to allow this beautiful black color that I'm putting on the back to show through. The exciting thing that you can do with antique mirror is when you've antiqued it, you can come back and use bright colored lacquers. You can use all different kinds of color, and that color is what's going to show through on the antique mirror. So I'm going to make sure I have 100% coverage. I'm going to allow it to dry about 20-30 minutes. Then I'm going to have a beautiful mirror that looks like this. So it has a multitude of uses. I can use it as backsplashes in a kitchen. I can use it on walls. I can use it on furniture. It's just amazing. Here's a great example of beautiful antiqued mercury mirror. You see how easy it is. Now go enjoy the bragging rights.